And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and got a little PowerPoint with some visuals, but I'm going to, we've got someone else here, Jennifer Hackett.
So I'm able to admit people, so I can monitor admitting people into the room, and I could help you monitor chat unless one of your teammates is already planning on doing that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of teammates that will be monitoring chats and helping as well. But I appreciate the offer, but I don't want you to feel like you have to do all of that.
Okay, so I'm off duty. I can just relax. Is that what you're saying?
Just relax.
All right.
We're all going to relax. We're going to keep it informal.
Okay.
So first, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. This is a focus group on our student dashboards. As you know, the personalized student dashboard is one of Dr. Battle's signature initiatives, and it's being developed in phases. And your input is going to help us as we go forward in future development. In fact, we are working on a report to supplement some of the current reporting that we have, because there's some limitations in what we can do visually in our current platform, and which lives within our student information system and the parent portal. We hope to be able to enhance the portal in the future, but we're going to have a supplementary report available, in fact, later this spring, which will, based on your feedback and other things that we're looking at, should hopefully be more informative than what we currently see. So assisting me today are a couple of my team members, Dr. Nicole Elizer and Peter Bussianet. And Nicole and Peter, if you want to say hi for a second, make sure people see you, know who you are.
Good
Nicole?
evening, everyone. Thank you for having us, and thank you for being here.
Peter?
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Peter. I'm assisting Paul in this project. We're happy to see you here, and we can't wait to hear your voices. Thank you.
Thank you both. And there at least probably one other person, and maybe others from my team or from within the district who've been working on this project who will potentially join us. Laura Stiver Walsh is one of my team members who's listening in today, but we'll probably have others join us. Hello, Laura. And all three that I've mentioned are also parents, but they're not civilian parents, so their voices aren't as important right now as the other voices here. I want to say, though, that we're going to be we want honest opinions and feedback. There's no right or wrong answers to questions that we're going to be asking. We want to hear different opinions. And you won't hurt our feelings if you don't like some of the visuals we're showing. We're actually showing, there are probably some visuals I'm not particularly fond of, but we want to have a little bit of a cross-section of possibilities here. And our goal is to come up with visuals that are easily understood and informative. And I know, having worked with test scores longer than I'd like to admit, that it's not always clear and transparent when we present data. And don't hesitate to speak up, ask clarifying questions as we go. So with that, we're going to start off with a short welcoming ritual, and to introduce those and our first poll questions, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
All right, so for our welcoming ritual, we are going to trial our polling feature for the first time this evening, but we are going to use it throughout. So our first poll question is asking, how energized are you feeling this evening? So you should see a poll question pop up on your screen.
Are people seeing a question that popped up in there? I see a head shaking. It's popping up on mine, but it may not be going
Yes.
out to.
No, I got it.
4 results, yeah. So it looks like 50% of us are feeling super energized, 25% pretty energized, and oh, the polls are changing. Oh, we've got one feeling not very energized. More are feeling super and pretty energized. So this is great. For those who are not very energized, we have some exciting information to give you tonight. I hope it does energize you a bit and get you excited about student dashboards. So, all right, so everyone can click done on the poll, and we will move on to our next slide. We have 2 poll questions to get us started before we take our deep dive in to look at the current reporting that we have on student dashboards. So the first poll question I want to ask you on this slide is, how often are you currently checking your child's academic progress via the student dashboard? So how often are you checking your child's academic progress right now via the student dashboard? Is that daily, weekly, monthly, every 9 weeks, end of semester, yearly, or never? So there's actually quite a few options. You can actually scroll down. So we've got some checking it weekly, some monthly, some every 9 weeks. That's great. I'm glad that you all have interacted with the dashboard, because that's really important for you as you give us feedback today. So you can press done on that poll, and we'll move on to our second question. As a parent, what would you like to see the most in your student's dashboard? And you can actually choose multiple options on this question. So the first option being my child's achievement progress, reading and math scores, my child's school behavior, cumulative attendance, performance in all subjects.
And if we haven't given you the option of your choice, trust me, you'll have opportunities during this session to give us more feedback.
So it looks like many are interested in reading and math scores for achievement progress, as well as performance in all subjects. We've got some for looking at school behavior. Thank you all for participating, and we will come back to this polling feature in future slides. I'll turn it back over to you, Paul.
Thank you. And I'm going to start with looking at attendance reporting. And we'll start with what we currently have in the student dashboard for each of these sessions or sections. And then we'll look at what lives within the, well, this is what's in our student information system now. And then we'll look at some potential ideas going forward in terms of visualizations that we think will enhance reporting, but that's where we'll be getting your feedback. So this is an example of the first page of attendance reporting for an elementary student. You can see the number of days the student's absent or tardy for any particular quarter. Then in this example, we're looking at quarter 2, the second 9 weeks of the first semester. And this student was absent 3 days. For high school students, the absences would be shown by scheduled course. And if we drill down further, we can see in the current dashboard when the absences occurred and whether they were excused or unexcused. Now we're going to look at some possible ways of reporting attendance in the future. So this slide and the 2 that follow will just show some possible ideas for showing attendance based on previous feedback we've received and some other discussion. And when you look at these visuals, don't think of them as a finished product. They can be modified, different visuals can be combined. Once again, our goal is to come up with something that's easily understood and informative. Now, this particular graphic, the chart that you see at the top is sometimes called a half circle or semicircle chart, or even a half donut chart. The portion of the half circle in gold represents the percentage of days that the student was in attendance out of the days that they were enrolled. In this case, that's 89% of the time. And you can see the gold color, if you look at the bottom underneath there, we see borderline listed as gold. That's telling us what performance category this student falls into based on the number of days present versus days absent. And for borderline, you see absences, for moderate, this student is moderate, more than 10% absent, but less than 20%. And these categories, some are defined by the Department of Education, such as satisfactory attendance when the student's there at least 95% of the time. But you also see text on here that has a student listed by name, how many days they were absent, how many of those were excused or unexcused, and out of the total number of days that the student's been enrolled during this school year. Also, the number of days that the student's been tardy. So now I'd like to get your feedback. Is there something about this way of reporting attendance that you like? And again, compared to what we just saw in those previous examples of what's there, does this add value to what we previously saw? And you can put comments in the chat, but I'd love to hear from you as well.
I think the graphic is nice just to see that, visualization. And then I think that the description, though, underneath where it talks about being tardy, that has nothing to do with the 89%, right?
Right.
So that may be a little confusing, where that 27 times out of what may cause some confusion, at least for me.
Yeah. And I see a comment. Yeah, a yellow font can be hard to read. It would probably need to be outlined or something. But yes, more eye-catching.
Also, this attendance, so there are 180 school days. So this attendance is at the 172nd day.
In this example, yes, it was after 172 days, or at least 172 days that this student was enrolled. So attendance is based on each student's enrollment. So depending on when they started school.
Okay.
So we've already gotten some feedback of things that might change, but are there other things in the visual that you don't care for, that you would change or take out?
So I'm just going to ask a really probably ridiculous question, probably because I don't have to deal with this myself much because my child doesn't miss school. But why would a parent be monitoring this information? Do you have students who skip school? Do you have students who have non-custodial parents or between custodial parents? What is the big pull to this information? Why would I look at this even monthly?
So that's a good question, and I wish that it was the case that this wouldn't be news to any parent, that they already know when their child is in school. We do have some that aren't aware either of certain absences or the number of absences, or haven't been keeping track during the year. But the reality is we have a significant number of students with a large percentage of absences that fall into the moderate and severe range, and I'm not sure that parents necessarily look at it in such a way that they know their child's occasionally absent, but maybe it really hasn't dawned on them how many days they've missed. And we'll look at some other visualizations too that might help in terms of getting more detail. But
now, my daughter had the flu in December of 2019, and I got a nice letter from Dr. Battle explaining how bad it was for my child to be gone more than 5 days. So is that still occurring?
My guess, someone should be reaching out, whether it's Dr. Battle. That I wasn't aware she was the one whose name was attached to some of that, but somebody should be reaching out when the numbers get up there. And of course, in a district this size, whether that's happening in every building, every classroom, I don't know, but the data is certainly there, and there are procedures in place for those types of notifications to occur. So let's look at a different way of reporting. And here, instead of the half circle, we have a black bar representing attendance. And again, this is the same student at 89%. But here we have color coding around that to show the different categories from severe to satisfactory in terms of those absences in attendance. But we also have a little bit of explanation at the top of the chart as to what is going on here. We have the number of days absent shown above the bar, both excused and unexcused. So similar type of information here, but a little different format. I see a comment that this bar is too busy, that you like option A better. And again, we don't all have to agree, so whatever direction, but looks like we've got some consistency here. Is there anything you like better about this bar than what we've seen, or not? And it's okay, again, if there's nothing here that's appealing. I'll take the silence as nothing here that necessarily is appealing. So let's look at one other representation for attendance. And again, we can combine different parts of this, but this is actually something that is part of what teachers and school leaders have available to them in our data warehouse, a calendar view, that green showing the days that the students in attendance, red the days that they're absent, which allows you sometimes to see if there's certain days that may be problematic. So any thoughts about this format? Is there something is this something you'd want to see for your child? Or are there things you would change or remove from here? We've got one more.
I like this one. This one's familiar, like Don said. And like you said, you can see if maybe that was a day where maybe you were on vacation or the child was ill. Now, can I ask, does this track excused absence? Is excused absent green?
No, there should be I'll have to see if we are first of all, I'll check to see if we distinguish. Right now, I think it's just showing absences. We have other places where we record whether it's excused or not. But that being said, we're looking for feedback. We could use different color coding between excused and unexcused absences if you wanted to present that. So that could be a very useful distinction. I don't think it's being made currently in our data warehouse, but I can certainly check.
I would say for me as a parent, this one, I mean, the graph was good with the arc and everything, but now that I see this is kind of what, as a parent, I would be able to spot where I messed up and took him on vacation, so sent him to school.
So let me ask this question.
Totally agree.
Would it be too much if we were to show two different graphics, to show like a summary with the half circle, but also have a calendar view potentially on the page as well? And that being said, when we, part of the challenge we're going to have is how all of this fits together without being overwhelming. But is that something that sounds like a good idea or a bad idea to maybe show both of these?
This one looks great. I think that the bar, maybe that's something that's on a quarterly. So like I'm done with Q1 and I go and look at Q1, and then I know my percentage for Q1 and I know my percentage for Q2. But just as a parent, when I open and I see this is kind of what I would be looking at for my child, not necessarily the percentage.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't think the percentage has any real relevance to us when we just look at it. 89%. Okay, so 89% of 180 days or 170 something days, whatever. You'd have to sit there and do the math to really figure it out. I actually, now that we've kind of discussed this, I love this because it's a great visual to very quickly show you what months, like Phoebe was talking about. What did you do? Where did you go? Was the kid sick? What exactly happened? And I don't know that the percentage would make me change my habits.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. Any other thoughts about this visual? And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we're talking about, and because we're somewhat limited right now with our current platform, although we're having conversations about some customization. But if all of this is online, one of the possibilities in the future is to have some drill downs. Like if we did have a percentage, but then you wanted to see on a month by month or day by day basis, have that capability. But anyway, I appreciate your feedback on the attendance side. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Nicole for our next poll question.
Okay, so for our next poll question, in thinking about all the visualizations that you just saw, including the current reporting, we're going to launch a poll that asks, do any of the proposed visuals that we just showed you bring additional value to the dashboard? So you'll see snapshots of those visuals on the slide. So if so, which visuals do you prefer? And you may choose more than one. And you can also choose current reporting as well, which is your option D.
So did you say that we would see the the choices A, B, C, and D, or is this from our memory?
Paul, can you go back one slide?
I certainly can.
There we go. You've got A is the half circle, B is the bar chart, C is the calendar view, and D is current reports.
So a full disclosure, maybe I'm not doing this right. I'm not able to see the presentation. The poll window is covering the presentation, just so you know.
Yeah, that's so A was the one with the half circle, B had the solid bar, and C was the calendar view, the day by day.
The next time we get to a poll question like this, we'll be sure to let you all lay your eyes on the slide for enough time before we launch that poll. So thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, I tried to move the poll question and it wouldn't let me, so that's one drawback.
So it looks like many people enjoyed the calendar feature as well as the half circle, and there are even some votes for current reporting as well. Thank you all for your feedback, and I'm going to throw it back to Paul.
Okay. So now we're going to talk briefly about behavior reporting. And this, again, is what we currently have available to us. It's pretty basic. You can see the incident or event that occurred and when it occurred, the date and time, and then you can drill down deeper in the lower portion of this. You can see what type of response or discipline occurred as a result of that incident. So in this example, the school decided not to take disciplinary action in response to the behavior event, which was not non-compliance with a reasonable request. And okay. So for a more serious incident, however, we might see some type of action occurred. Now, are you all seeing the presentation? Because it disappeared on here for me.
No, it disappeared.
It disappeared also here.
I'm not sure what happened there, but we will get back to it in just a second.
So can I just make a general comment about finding behavior in the Infinite Campus?
Sure.
It's so, you have to click on the more to find it. Yeah. It's kind of buried.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not something that we have control over right now. As I mentioned, we are having some conversations about potentially customizing, but we're using a platform that's used nationally, and that was not one of the initial options on there. But I do appreciate that feedback, and we'll see if there's some things we can do to make that more transparent, more easily found. And the same thing with assessments are also on the more page.
Sure are.
Yeah. So that's what that's currently what we have in here. And if I show you some other ideas that we're looking at, this is actually also from one of our data warehouse reports, currently available to teachers but not parents. And on the left, it shows the number of times various types of behavior incidents have occurred during the school year. On the right, we see the number of times that various types of discipline responses have occurred for this student. And with that, I'm just going to ask if there's anything in this reporting that you like, especially compared to what we saw on the previous slide.
I'm not seeing the slide that you're referencing. I'm still seeing the student dashboard focus group title slide.
Is any, okay, is anyone, let me,
I see potential behavior visuals.
Yeah, I'm seeing slide 10 of 21, potential behavior visuals.
I'm going to log out and log back in, see if I can catch up to where you guys are.
okay, sorry about that. So for those who are able to see this slide, and is there, okay, where Sarah's back. Are there things you like about this? Are there things you would change or remove from this format that you think might make it more useful?
I don't understand what I'm reading. So can you explain?
So on the left, we this is for one student. The number of discipline offenses, there were twice in this school year, the student was observed fighting, 2 times cutting class, 2 times some other school disruption. These are all coded. There are tiers of behavior infractions. These are tier 3 and tier 2, moderate or less threatening offenses. On the right are the number of times that certain types of discipline responses occurred, such as 3 times the student had an in-school suspension, 1 restorative conference, 1 out-of-school suspension, 1 local discipline. So the left is the incident, the right is the response to that incident at the school. Again, it's not telling you the specifics of when it occurred, but just how often it occurred. So I see a comment about maybe make everything but restorative conference red, make that one green to support it.
I would guess by the time we saw this, we would have already been notified of something that happened, correct?
I would certainly hope so for some of the more serious offenses, especially anything that's going to lead to a suspension, out of school suspension, of course. What elevates may vary a little bit at a school building, and again, sometimes it's whether it's a one-time thing or a series of things that are occurring, but there should be some, in a situation like this with this many incidents, there should be communication going home. Any other thoughts about this before we look at another potential visualization?
So I think my only thing is like, I don't know what a restorative conference is. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
and we're talking about an opportunity. What we're trying to do is to you might say nip these in the bud before things elevate. What can we do in terms of having positive conversations, trying to get to root cause issues, working, with the family to try to address what's initiating the behavior, but rather than just to immediately react with some form of suspension. But that can take on some different that can take different directions, and I'd be happy to provide some more information. But historically, there's been sometimes an overreaction in terms of pulling kids out of school when we want them in buildings. So we're trying to deal with things in terms of social, emotional behavior, what we can do to support the family when there are situations that might be elevating behavior incidents and so forth. But let's take a look at one other behavior visual, and this is simply in a table format with some color coding. I see someone else took control, and I'm going to have to share this again. Sorry, but give me just a second here. And Nicole, I've got it set that it looks like I should be the only one scrolling, but can you all see now the potential behavior visual that has the table with the school, the school where the incident occurred, the date of the incident, the offense, and then the severity code, 1 being the least severe, 5 the most severe, which is color coded in red here, and then the response to that. So it's a simple table format with each of these documented. And it goes a little bit beyond what we saw in the current platform, a little slightly different version of this. So that being said, anything you like about this format?
I like that it's a report. It has more details than the previous visual.
Agreed. I like this.
Is there anything that you might suggest changing or removing to make it even more appealing, more informative? And by the way, you can see at the bottom the number of days, some summary data on the number of suspensions, the number of incidents that were moderate, level 3 or higher. But any other suggestions on this one?
I mean, I think this is probably going to come up just in general with the reporting, that maybe some of the language, parents won't be familiar with what some of the terms are. So I'm guessing they would have to refer to the student handbook for more details so they can better understand, like, what, I don't know what OSS stands for and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's out of school suspension. But yeah, so let me just say in general, for any of these reports, we have done this for our assessment reports, and you'll see a partial example of that. We have links in the portal that take you to explanations and in some cases annotated examples that kind of walk you through some of that. There would probably need to be a link to the parent-student handbook as well, but we could probably at least, there shouldn't be any acronym that's not spelled out without some kind of information to help. In this example, there's a little bit of summary on the right, but not everything is spelled out in as much detail as would be helpful. So now, and I see this comment that this being too busy, and there is obviously the more situations a student is in, the busier it's going to get, and hopefully we don't have too many cases with this many incidents, but they are out there. So it's a good time for us to kind of look at the next poll question and get your feedback on the behavior reporting.
Okay, so do either of the proposed visuals bring additional value to the dashboard? If so, which one? So we've got A is the bar graph visualization that we saw, and then B is the visualization we were just looking at as a chart. And then your C option will be the current reporting that is in the student dashboard. So if everybody can just take a quick look at these two images, and then we will launch our poll. A is the bar graph and B is the chart. Peter, if you want to go ahead and launch the poll. There we go. So disregard D on this response form. A
Right.
will be those bar graphs. B will be the chart we just looked at on the prior slide. And C would be current reporting. Okay, so it looks like some people enjoyed current reporting while others enjoyed the first visualization, the bar chart, while a majority enjoyed the chart. Thank you all for your feedback. Now we're going to head into assessment.
We're in the home stretch. We're going to talk about assessments, and this part can be a little more complicated than anything else. But first, we're looking at what's in the current platform. This is what you might see for a student in elementary or middle school who's taken both state assessments, 10 Ready, and district map benchmark assessments. And as I said, to help parents better understand the results, we do have links in the dashboard that provide some additional explanation. And for example, this next screen, this is part of what you would find in one of those links. So you see in red some text that gives a little bit of summary of what the various scores are intended to represent. If you went to this link, you would also see some additional text that walks you through the purpose of the assessment and hopefully some context that helps you in interpreting scores. But that being said, even for our educators, sometimes it takes some additional support to be able to truly understand all of this. And it's a report that we want teachers to be able to support parents with. In this particular case, with the MAP data, first with the state data, there's a scale score that's reported, but more importantly, under the result column, we see what the state calls achievement or performance levels, with below being the lowest, mastered at the top end of the scale. And if a student is on track or mastered, they're considered to be on track for college and career readiness. That's what the state defines as being proficient. For the MAP data below, we have what's a scale score that we call a RIT score. For those of you who've seen MAP scores, the higher the RIT score, the higher the student is in terms of achievement, regardless of grade level. Those numbers should increase over time. In the result column, we have a national percentile, which tells you what percentage of students nationally scored lower than this student did on the test for that subject at that grade level. And then, of course, the date of the test. So that's what's currently available. At the high school level, we also have, in the same type of format, ACT, college entrance exams, state end of course or EOC exams for certain subjects. And here we have a scale score, and under the result, we have not a national, but a state percentile. What percentage of students statewide scored lower than this student in each subject? So those numbers would range from 1 to 99. But and I know there's a lot to unpack on the assessment side, but we did want to share just a few visuals for you. And this is an example that it's shown for MAP, but our benchmark in grades 2 through 9, but it could be used with other assessments in which a student's score is placed within a broader category, a score category. In this particular example, the arrow represents the student's national percentile score. And then that's placed within what we call a quintile score. There are a national quintile, there's 5 of them, and nationally 20% of students are in each quintile. So if a student's below the 20th percentile, they're in the bottom quintile. They're on the far left, and the one shown in red. And as their score goes up, their achievement increases. They go from left to right, with the top quintile, the 5th quintile, being shown in blue. And in this particular example, you'll see that we have a student's math scores from 3 different times of the year, their language arts scores from 3 different times of the year. There's an arrow showing their percentile score, and it's color-coded based on the quintile that they fell within. At the very top bar, we see a yellow for a student that's in that middle quintile or 3rd quintile. They're somewhere in that what's defined as the average range. If you look at the scale at the very bottom of the chart, it goes from low to average to high. There's also a little bit of text that lists the student by name and where they are in their quintile. And this is somewhat similar to some visuals that we have shared with educators in the past, but not with parents. So with that, I'd like to get your feedback on what we're looking at here. Does this have any value to you as something you think is helpful, particularly compared to what we just saw in the previous tables?
I actually like this compared to what the current option is. I struggle with the current option because it's not laid out very well to be able to tell how the progression over time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is easier for me to be able to see that progression over time.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I guess parents could learn new terms, but I just think that quintile is not something that is day-to-day language.
Yeah.
So I just struggle with it being too technical.
I agree.
And I can assure you that quintiles is not a term that we see often among assessments. There is an attempt to put it in terms of low to average to high, or low average, high average, but I don't know if that's enough to make it meaningful to people. But I appreciate that feedback. Is there anything else that you would change or modify on this in terms of the visual layout?
I'm not sure, but if just thinking chronologically, I understand that the top one is the most recent score, but if they're growing, I don't know, it's the whole left to right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wonder what parents would prefer. I can't say what I would prefer, but if parents would prefer them to be in chronological order, where the oldest is at the top and the most recent is at the bottom. Just thought.
Okay.
I want to echo that it doesn't matter to me which way, but just to reiterate my point in the chat that it really it matters. The current configuration does not, like, you could try to find your score from last year fall and it's totally jumbled up with something from 3rd grade, which was several years ago. You know what I mean? It's very out of whack, and difficult to interpret at all. So as long as it's laid out in the actual dates moving forwards or backwards, that would be a giant improvement.
Okay, I appreciate that comment. The next visual is one that the vendor NWA produces in one of their reports that some of our schools have sent home and may still be sending home. It's another attempt to show trends over time, but also to provide some comparison data. So from left to right, we're looking at a student's scores. This is for mathematics, and it's showing it on in the RIT scale, the scale score scale that I mentioned. The higher the RIT score, the higher that numeric score, the higher the student's achievement in that subject area. And the WI stands for winter of 20, followed by fall. Then you have fall of 20, winter of 21, spring of 21, etc. The blue bar is the student. The orange bar is the grade level average for the district. And the yellow bar represents the national average when this test was normed for that at that time of year for that grade, that subject. So it's an attempt to give you both comparison data, but also look at trend data. And to the right is a table that has some of the numeric values that are shown graphically, but also include national percentile scores, as well as a growth score, how many scale score points that the child gained over time. But both the RIT score and the scale score, the RIT score and the percentile range are shown as part of a range. They're shown as good students have good days and bad days taking tests. If we had tested this student the next day, they would be anticipated to fall within that range. So let me get your feedback. And I know there's a lot here, but your initial thought, and then you can also see down below where they fell on some specific areas within mathematics that are tested by MAP. Operations and algebraic thinking, they were in the low average range. That's going by their quintiles. Number and operations, high average. So your thoughts on this?
This is similar to how the printed out scores come home right now, correct?
This is one of the options schools have for printed reports. But yes, a lot of our schools have sent this out. The district has on occasion sent them out in this format.
I do like the fact that I can see it left to right. I think the RIT and the norm grade level mean RIT, kind of along BB's point previously, I think in any way, if you can provide consumer basic level, not statistical language for these things, obviously you can put a key that shows RIT if people actually follow that and care about it. But I would rather just see student score, district grade level, average, or, just something. I understand mean is probably the average, but it can make people go, what? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the data, Dr. Chang, is when I got my first report when my children were in kindergarten, I asked my principal, like, what am I supposed to do with this data? And I think for this one, I would still ask the same question, like, what is this what will I use this information for? The previous visuals you gave for behavioral and attendance, I know what to do with that information. I need to make sure my child is in school. I need to follow up with their school on offenses. But for this one, I look at this and I go, great, I've got all this numbers, but what do I do next? I'm still not sure.
And I'm in the interest of time, we'll kind of hold that thought, but what we're talking about with assessment part of it a lot of times is just to try to give feedback in terms of are things moving in the right direction? Are the trends where we want them to be? There could be some situations that might be helpful in communicating to families whether a child qualifies for some advanced academic program or academic magnet program, et cetera. But a lot of it's just to kind of give them some perspective of where their child is compared to other students at that grade level, either locally or nationally. But in terms of what to do with that, the conversations parents have with teachers on a more regular basis are going to probably be more helpful on the what to do part. And I don't want to take more time. We allocated an hour. I do have 2 visuals. If you have a few minutes to stick with us, fine. If not, I certainly understand. But I'm going to give you a quick look at 2 other graphics. And this one is something that educators have had an option of looking at. It's an attempt to show longitudinal data from our TCAP test. This is within mathematics. It shows the students from year to year, from 2016-17 through 2020-21. The solid blue line is that child's ranking among Tennessee students. So last year, the students scored higher than 21% of students in Tennessee in mathematics at that grade level, which would have been the 8th grade level. But this also has a dotted line at the end that's based not just on mathematics, but their overall achievement in multiple subjects. And the assumption that if this student had a teacher of average effectiveness in the coming year, this is where they would be projected to be a year later in terms of their achievement. And it's showing them in terms of their state ranking in the graph. Down below, it shows the probability of them being in the approaching achievement level next year, or on the on track or mastered level. So there's, according to this data, a very small chance that the student's going to be on track or mastered. But we've never provided what we call projections or predictions to future performance on tests. The state does provide that. Again, it's based on certain assumptions. And below that are also the state percentiles by year. But a lot of times families don't have the longitudinal history on their child unless they keep a series of reports. So I guess my question is, if you have any immediate thoughts on this, do you like the idea of having some best guess as to where your child is headed next year based on past data? But of course, that can change in a year significantly depending on the child, on the teacher, and all kinds of circumstances. But initial thoughts or questions?
I like the line graph in general as a theory. I think all the stuff below, to me, I'm not sure that would catch my eye very much. And the probability of success, it doesn't really say, is that a percentage point? Like they have 7.9% chance, or there's nothing to help me know what sense to make of those numbers. But I do like seeing the growth in this linear fashion, and I do like the projection. I would be curious to know how we do on the projections, if anybody has ever measured that. You know, do kids underperform those projections? Do we generally hit them? Do we outperform them? If I had a student who was struggling and I could compare what they were projected at last year and how low below that projection there is, that would cause me to make an action step to discuss that. Like, why is my child not progressing as expected? So that's just my feedback.
That's great feedback. And I'll just briefly tell you that when we have looked at those predictions, how well they hold up over time. In a district this size, on average, they actually do correlate and hold up pretty well. But as you can imagine, there are all kinds of exceptions to that. We have students who far exceed what was predicted, and others who fall quite a bit short. But on average, they tend to do well. But average versus an individual student, that can vary considerably. Any other thoughts on this one? I'm gonna show one more, and we will call it a night after that. But this is showing something in a format somewhat. Part of this is similar to what the state provides. This is showing the performance level from TCAP, and you can see the explanations that the state provides for each performance level at the top. This is just a little bit of narrative to try to explain what those levels mean. And then each student's score, and based on how many questions they got right, you can see whether they're in the low end or the high end of each achievement level. For instance, this child in English language arts was on track, but not that, just a little bit above the cut score between approaching and on track. But also you can see from subject to subject how they did. It's looking at 1 year scores in a little different format on achievement levels. Any feedback here, pros or cons on this visual?
I think if numbers could be there, it would be more effective. If there is a number score for that, that's like 200 or whatever, I would kind of like to see that in conjunction with the way that things are laid out.
So potentially, we do have scale scores, but perhaps even like a state percentile ranking of where that child scored compared to other Tennessee students.
Yeah, something.
Any other thoughts?
Paul, I thought this was a clustered chart. So the divisions that you see here is like 25% per any scale. So below will be 0 to 25, and then approaching will be 25 to 50. And then
actually, in the graphic, it looks like 25, but it's not really. It varies by grade level and by subject. It's the reason it looks like 25 was to allow space to put the performance level, but the percentage, the majority of Tennessee students are not on track or mastered that, and so those. We could show it differently graphically in terms of the actual percentage statewide. Then each of those subjects would look a little different in terms of the length of those bars. But that's something else we could mock up and try. And I don't want to keep people. I know we've gone past our hour. We did have one more poll question just to get your immediate feedback, and this may be hard to keep in your heads. We've looked at 4 different visuals, but which of these, Nicole, I'll let you ask the question.
Sure. So do any of the proposed visuals bring additional value to the dashboard. You may choose more than one. When we launch the poll, there will be an E option for current reporting. So take a look at these different visualizations and try to keep the letter or letters in your head. Feel free to throw them in the chat even if that's helpful. So take a look at A, B, C, and D, and then Peter will launch our poll and you'll be able to input the visualizations that you think bring the most additional value to the student dashboard. So it looks like C and D are pretty popular, making up a majority of responses currently. And that is continuing to be a trend. Thank you all for your feedback.
And I'm going to put my email address in the chat because first of all, I just want to thank you for hanging with us. We honestly weren't sure we'd even get to the assessment part today, but I'm glad we were able to get into it. We wanted to give you time to add any thoughts or concerns. You're welcome to email me with additional comments, but is there anything else pressing right now in terms of feedback? Other things you'd like to see or things we didn't cover?
Sorry, I missed the first few minutes of the meeting. I apologize. Did you all only cover achievement and discipline on here? What were the first two, or what was the first section?
The first one was attendance. Was the only other.
Attendance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that'll probably, and we'll be going over that next week as well. But I'll be happy to send you, if you want to email me, I can send you the visuals that we looked at.
Okay. Yeah, I actually was just on Infinite Campus tonight looking over some things. So there were things that I'm like, why is this always like this? And maybe it's obvious to others, but if it's okay, I'll just email you those individual questions.
That'll be great.
Okay.
And again, thank you. We've gotten some great feedback, and this is a process, as I've said before, and will occur in phases. And we'll be listening to other groups, but there were some things very helpful that we heard tonight, and we'll continue to try to enhance those visuals. And I see Bibby typing. Can we get the contact email from the parents?
Yeah, I was hoping, Dr. Changas, that I could get their contact information so I can follow up with an email from the PAC. I know you said you had, you were tracking the participant list.
I see some popping up in the chat, so we would love to get that. Well, I'll be here, but I know others have lives to get back to, and I just want to thank you all again. Bibi, thanks for helping us set this up. Peter and Nicole, thanks for your assistance. And we will continue to collect input, collect thoughts, and try to keep improving what we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.